Today I want to talk about parkour flow for fursuiters. If you've been watching this series so far, thank you. So far we've been putting individual skills together, but the point of flow is how do you conserve momentum? How do you make it look smooth in between moves? Or when you practice moves well enough to where they look nice and smooth, so they look really cool in front of, say, I don't know, an audience. So flow is more about chaining things together, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a parkour move. It's literally anytime you interact with a surface, right? You make it look nice and smooth, nice and deliberate, even if it was an accident. So a couple of ways I go about this is, first of all, you've probably figured it out by now, I plan a little bit of what's called a parkour line. And this is where you have an imaginary line that goes, around an obstacle, an idea of the flow of movement of where you want to go. And what you can do is break it down. The first obstacle, work on that piece. Second obstacle, work on that piece. Now connect the two, right? And so on and so forth. Another way to get used to this, especially if something unexpected happened, is to do spontaneous practice, AKA playing. You could do tag's a really good one. You can do follow the leader. I don't really work out. I go play. If I'm going to go for a run workout, really what I'm doing is going to run in the woods where it's scenic and enjoyable. And I usually run over rocks, I jump on things, I lift up logs, I crawl on branches. I have fun, I go play. Because that teaches my brain that working out is not a chore. It is something that I enjoy doing, and I'm drilling all of these parkour related skills, also known as conditioning. And honestly, it takes time, like everything else. It takes months, if not years, of practice to make things look really smooth. A great way to see this is when you film yourself doing something, especially in slow-mo if you have that option. So you can really zoom in and figure out, my foot placement seemed a little too wide, or I slipped on this, because you should always check your surfaces before you start interacting with something to make sure it's not sandy, wet, it might slip. So anything I do, I've done it in the video. I have done that exact move probably a dozen times before the video was actually filmed. So how do I do that in a fursuit or in any costume, right, that has any kind of excess parts or things on them? In my case, for fursuits, we're allergic to friction, right? We have fur that does not grow back. And what I mean by that is the force is going down onto the object and not rubbing across the object, because that's what damages your fur. That is my secret sauce of how this fursuit is 7 years old. And you may be tempted to put some kind of protection on your fursuit. I don't recommend doing that. Now, if you're wearing a partial and you have an exposed arm with no fur on it and you put like an elbow pad there, that's totally fine. I'm talking about putting things on top of your fursuit. Like you probably have noticed, I have worn tactical gear before. I no longer do that for a few reasons. So over time, even that little bit of weight will wear down on the shoulders. Even a little bit of, say, on the thighs, for example, when I'm doing rolls, that does rub against the fur. And another thing that I have to be careful about, and this may apply to you, I have a tail. This tail is about 6 feet long. That's as tall as I am. I do something what I call tail tracing. Because this is not a shaped tail, this is just a polyfill tail that basically acts like just a streamer, right? It just whatever direction I go, it's going to just follow and trace my steps. I call it tail tracing. So what I'm thinking is, while I am practicing the move, like the slow practice version of thinking myself through the move of how I want to do this, I also imagine where this tail is going to go, because I want to make sure it's not going to end up in between my legs and trip me. I want to make sure it doesn't get caught on something. This little tail fin right here can definitely get caught on a ledge. I test corners and surfaces to make sure they are not sharp, right? And I typically wear a tail cover if I'm outdoors on this thing. A tail cover is just something, a thicker material, like an outdoor material that I zip up just to protect this. Just as an example, I wanted to walk you through a couple of moves that I tied together for flow purposes for this video. But I start off out of suit with a precision jump. And then I transition that into a roll, and I transition that into a safety vault. So then I run off into the sunset, right? But the idea is I am practicing these moves individually, and once I finish a move, before I start the next one, I take note. Where are my feet going to be? Where are my hands going to be? How much momentum do I have? How much speed do I have right now? Do I have enough to throw my legs over this obstacle? So doing this in fursuit, everything becomes even more complicated. That's why it's important to drill these out of suit. So when you bring them into fursuit, you'll notice my feet are pretty dang close to the bench right before I do a safety vault. The tail does drag and could potentially get caught on the bench, but it does not because I checked the bench beforehand. I rubbed my hand on it to make sure there wasn't any edges I was gonna catch. And I do this at conventions as well. So for example, at Anthrocon, the morning I did parkour with Beta Monkey, I spent that morning warming up in that exact same spot out of suit. So that is the behind the scenes of how I do this. But in general, flow is just a way to chain moves together and to get you really thinking about, if you're gonna be doing multiple moves in a performance, how physically long does that distance take, right? That you can calculate, oh, if I do a roll, I'll be about a couple feet away from the next obstacle. Do I have room to do a vault, or do I just run, right? That'll make your performances look so much smoother and so much more professional when you are actually doing them. So I hope this series has been useful so far. I do plan on making more as time goes on when I have time to do them. If you like this series, please let me know. Or if you have any questions, concerns, or suggestions for future topics, also please let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching.
Oh, that was a rough one. I don't like that. Oh, I fucked up that roll again. Much better. Oh, smooth. Smooth.
You good?